Before the world knew his name, there was already a web of power hiding in plain sight. A story of money, secrets, and control that reached the highest levels of society. From hidden lists to powerful connections, this is the full story of Jeffrey Epstein, the one they didn't want you to see. What you're about to watch combines every piece of the puzzle, from the Epstein List, the web of power, lies, and the secrets of the elite. This is the Epstein Files, the full story they tried to erase. They called him a billionaire, a genius investor, a man who knew everyone, from presidents to princes. But behind the mansions, behind the private jets, lived a secret darker than anyone could imagine. This is the story of Jeffrey Epstein, the man who built an empire of lies, and the system that let him do it. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York. He wasn't born rich. He wasn't born powerful, but he was smart, dangerously smart. He started as a math teacher at a private school in Manhattan. His charm, his confidence, his ability to impress powerful people, it opened doors, and one of those doors would change everything. He met the billionaire Leslie Wexner, founder of Victoria's Secret. From that moment, Epstein's life transformed. He went from classrooms to penthouses, from middle class to private islands. But what no one knew was the monster that was growing behind the mask. Epstein wasn't just collecting money, he was collecting people, politicians, celebrities, royalty. He threw lavish parties. He made everyone feel safe, important, untouchable. But beneath the luxury, he was building something sinister, a web of exploitation and control. His mansion in New York, his ranch in New Mexico, his island in the Caribbean, each one a stage for his crimes, each one another piece of the puzzle. He preyed on young girls, promised opportunity, delivered nightmares. What made Epstein different wasn't just the crimes, it was who he knew. Power protected him. Connections shielded him. Every time the truth got close, it disappeared. Reports were buried, witnesses silenced, and somehow, Epstein kept walking free. In 2008, he was caught, charged, and somehow he struck a deal, a sweetheart deal. He served 13 months in a private wing, allowed to leave the jail 6 days a week for work. Justice had been bought. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Years later, brave women came forward. Their voices broke the silence. And this time, the world listened. In 2019, Epstein was arrested again. The evidence was undeniable. Photos, documents, flight logs. The walls were closing in. Powerful names began to surface. Names the world recognized. And that's when everything changed. August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The official story, suicide, but the cameras malfunctioned. The guards fell asleep, and the questions never stopped. How does one of the most high-profile prisoners in the world die under 24-hour surveillance? Was it guilt, or was it something else, something deeper, something they didn't want us to see? After his death, the files started leaking. Thousands of pages, names, dates, transactions. The web was bigger than anyone imagined, and yet, most of it disappeared into the shadows. The case was closed, but the question stayed open. Who protected him? Who helped him? And most importantly, who's still out there? Because Epstein may be gone, but the system that created him isn't. This story isn't just about a man. It's about power, control, and the price of silence. Jeffrey Epstein built his empire on fear, but in the end, truth doesn't die in the dark, it waits for the light. This is the Epstein Files. They thought the story ended in that cell, but the truth didn't die with him. It only began to echo louder. When Jeffrey Epstein's name hit the headlines, the world asked one question: how could one man build such a fortress of influence? The answer was simple and terrifying: power. The kind that doesn't come from money alone, but from who answers your calls. Epstein had built an invisible web. Politicians, business leaders, scientists, actors, and even royalty faces that shaped nations and headlines. Some called him charming, brilliant, connected. Others whispered that his charm was a mask, a trap, a door into something darker. Every handshake was a thread, every party another knot in his web of power. His private jets became meeting rooms in the sky. His island, a secret stage for the elite. Photos surfaced, flight logs leaked, names appeared in court documents. The world gasped not because they proved guilt, but because they proved proximity. Epstein had surrounded himself with the untouchable, and for years, that circle protected him. Investigations stalled, stories vanished, people turned away. It wasn't just about what he did, it was about who was willing to look the other way. But after his death, the silence began to crack. Journalists dug deeper, survivors spoke louder, governments reopened files. The truth was spreading, and this time no one could stop it. The world began to see how power defends itself, how reputation can be armor, and how fear can buy silence. Behind every secret was another door, another connection, another unanswered question. What did they know? What did they see? And how far would they go to keep it hidden? The Epstein network was more than names, it was a system. A network built on favors, on access, on the illusion of trust. Some inside it claimed ignorance, others claimed friendship, but the truth lay somewhere in between. Money moved quietly, foundations, charities, investments, layers upon layers, until no one knew where it began or ended. And while the world argued over headlines, the victims waited for justice. In courtrooms and documentaries, their stories started to surface, proof that behind every secret meeting, there was a human cost. Epstein's partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, was arrested. Her trial peeled back the curtain even further. The testimony was chilling, the evidence undeniable, and yet, even as she was sentenced, many questions remained unanswered. Who else was involved? Who still hides in the shadows of that web? The more we looked, the more we realized Epstein's story wasn't about one man, it was about the system that allowed him to exist. A world where power protects power, and truth is a currency few can afford. Even today, sealed documents reveal fragments of a larger picture. Memos, flight lists, phone records, all pointing to how far his influence reached. Some say the world has moved on, but has it? Every time a new file emerges, every time a survivor speaks, the light gets brighter, and the shadows grow smaller. The Epstein network was built on silence, but silence breaks, always. The question now is, what will be left when the truth finally stands alone? This is the Epstein Files, Part 2, The Web of Power. Because every secret exposed reveals another, tracing the trails of money and influence that once seemed untouchable. Each revelation chips away at the myth of invincibility that shielded the elite. The world begins to understand that Epstein's web wasn't built overnight. It was built on decades of access, trust, and fear. In offices once filled with laughter, whispers now echo. In courtrooms, survivors face questions they've answered 100 times, searching for recognition instead of pity. The investigations move slowly, layer by layer, like peeling the paint from a portrait to dark to see clearly. Every document unsealed, every testimony recorded, becomes another piece of a puzzle that no one wants to finish. As the years pass, new names rise in business, politics, and entertainment. The lesson of Epstein's empire lingers like smoke in a closed room, a warning about what happens when power forgets humanity. Some deny ever knowing him, some admit to crossing paths, yet all agree on one thing: the world will never look at privilege the same way again. The story of Jeffrey Epstein isn't frozen in 2019. It's alive in the calls for reform, in the questions still unanswered, in the determination of those who refuse to forget. Justice moves slowly, but memory never stops. The truth has a strange patience. It waits in evidence boxes, in courtroom archives, in the memories of those who lived through it. It waits for the next generation to ask, how could this happen? And who let it? Maybe that's why the Epstein files will never really close. Because this story isn't about one man, it's about all the walls that silence built. and the people who decided to tear them down. They said the story ended in 2019, but stories like this never really end. They echo through courts, through headlines, through the lives left behind. After Epstein's death, the world was left with questions and files, thousands of pages, depositions, flight records, bank transfers, each one another thread in a web that refused to die. Ghislaine Maxwell, the partner, the recruiter, the enabler. When she was arrested in 2020, the cameras returned, the headlines screamed again. For the first time, someone from inside the empire was facing justice in that courtroom. Survivors stood tall, no longer silenced by power. Their words carried the weight of years, decades, and finally, the world listened. But even with the verdict, there was no closure, because for every answer, new questions appeared. Documents revealed links, meetings, transactions, connections that stretched across oceans and industries. Some names were redacted, others were forgotten. Yet, every page hinted at something larger, something systemic. The media moved on, new scandals, new distractions, but the survivors didn't. They kept fighting through civil suits, through documentaries, through the slow grind of truth. Each case another step toward accountability. Behind closed doors, institutions scrambled to protect themselves, companies distanced their brands, politicians issued statements, everyone claimed ignorance. But silence is its own confession. The system that built Epstein didn't collapse, it simply adapted, changed its face, found new ways to hide. Meanwhile, investigators traced money trails leading to offshore accounts and shell companies, billion-dollar trusts buried beneath legal smoke. Forensic accountants pieced together fragments of an empire meant to disappear. And the deeper they dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about one man. It was about the machinery of power itself. There were whispers of sealed indictments, of new witnesses coming forward. Each revelation sparked outrage, brief, loud, then forgotten. But truth doesn't need headlines to survive. It just needs to exist, waiting for the right moment to be heard. Again, the world began asking a new question. If one man could operate this long, with this much protection, what does that say about the world that allowed it? About the people who saw, who knew, and chose to look away. In the years since, the island stands empty, the mansion sold, the jet grounded. But the legacy remains a reminder that evil doesn't always hide in the dark. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, wearing suits, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with power. For the survivors, justice isn't measured in verdicts, it's measured in memory. Every story told, every name remembered, is a small victory against the silence, because that's how darkness loses, not with revenge, but with truth. And as the files keep surfacing, as redacted names fade away, the world edges closer to understanding the full picture. It's not just an investigation anymore, it's a mirror reflecting how easily we trade morality for influence. This is not the end of the Epstein files, because the shadows haven't stopped moving. The truth hasn't finished speaking, and the silence still has secrets left to tell. This is the Epstein Files, Part 3: Aftermath of Silence.